Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get started here in just a moment with this special International XR panel, which is part of the Fifth International Media and Society Symposium, hosted by Istiniye University. So we're waiting for one more speaker to join us, and I think as well we might need to change the main pinned screen here. So let's see how we do that. Okay, maybe that's what we do. Okay. So, oh, look, we have our last speaker now. So we're all set. We have all four speakers here with us. So what's going to happen is in this session, we're going to have four different presentations, one from each speaker, and that is followed by a panel discussion where we collectively discuss the many different ideas that we all will bring to you tonight, not just to you, to each other, since I don't know what the other speaker, I know the titles of the other speakers' presentations, but I've not heard these presentations before or seen them. So I'm, along with you, very interested to hear what the other speakers have to say. So let me first introduce all of our speakers. So in order of who will present, and actually we have a little pop-up here with, let's see, better quality transcription. Yeah, I'm going to apparently update my speaking language since these four presentations, and the panel discussion afterward will be in English if that isn't already clear. So this will be an English sequence of presentations. So again, in order of who is speaking and who is presenting this evening, I am Michael Barngrover. I will be the host and the MC and the first speaker. So I am the managing director of XR4Europe, which is a European association that represents people who work with immersive technologies, XR, mixed reality, virtual reality, projection mapping, lots of different related technologies and experiential mediums. We represent those who work with them all over Europe, which includes Turkey, which is why I'm happy to be participating here. I'm also the founding member of XR Türkiye. So I am a Turkish citizen, proudly, and always very happy to work with those in the ecosystem, the Turkish XR ecosystem. So of which Hatice Hoca of Istiniye University is one of our most active members. Now, the next speaker is Christina Kinne, or often better known as the Xaos Princess. So she will have a presentation about a really exciting project that she's been working on for a few years now, but which has evolved quite a lot with the technology. So we're going to hear probably how she's had to change, but I think as well how the tools have just gotten much easier and much more powerful that she's been working with for some time. Following her presentation will be Tim Duysen. Tim Duysen is the founder of an eponymous studio that works with the creative and cultural projects, but as well as enterprise projects. He's actually very diverse what he works at a studio, but he's also the president or chairperson, excuse me, I believe chairperson of the XRBB, which is the nonprofit association that represents the XR industry in Berlin-Brandenburg, the capital region of Germany. And following last but not least is Sonia Setarasan, who's probably familiar maybe to some of the audience because she has, even though she's based in Barcelona, she is a UI, UX, and XR design researcher who has engaged often with the Turkish XR community through XR Türkiye, through online events, and through hackathon support and such. She's been very often engaged with us. So without further ado, so each presentation is about 15 minutes, maybe a little less, but approximately about 15 minutes, so that it gives us plenty of time to have a panel discussion at the end. Each of the speakers will share their screen, so that's why I get to go first to test it and make sure that this system is working, and if not, I'm the one who's on screen looking silly and not anyone else. So I will go directly into the first presentation, but maybe I shouldn't do that actually. Now, what am I doing? What am I doing? I've been talking this whole time. I introduced all of our speakers, but I didn't invite our speakers to speak before they have to present, because once they start presenting, it's ideas and excitement and innovation. It's probably a good idea that I let each of the speakers casually, in a relaxed setting, say hi to you, the audience, and introduce themselves. So since I've been talking the whole time, let's go with the next speaker, Christina, Xaos Princess. Just not too long, but just say hi to the audience and introduce yourself a little bit, and then you'll have more time later to talk.
Hi all, yeah, I'm Christina Kinne in real life, Xaos Princess in VR, and in the first half of my creative life I've been a filmmaker, but then since 2016 I'm a social VR content creator, and I jumped onto GPT-3 as soon as it was available to create our quantum bar, and based also my Masters of Arts research creation thesis on this, which the talk later on is about. And I'm currently, since my talk is more focusing on like the general approach on what to take into consideration when working with AI or large language models, I'm currently also like developing further projects in which we want to use like the newest LLM technology and also video and 3D generation, and I'd be happy to get deeper on that like in the panel talk, and I'm looking forward to all your presentations, and I'm very much excited to giving my own, and thank you so much for having us. This is like a really wonderful panel and a wonderful audience. Thanks a million, Michael.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, now on to Tim. Tim, please just take a quick moment to introduce yourself and maybe some of the been doing some Turkish projects in recent years, as I understand.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, of course, thanks a lot, Michael, and also very nice to be here with you and the others. I'm looking forward to hearing what's going on. And of course, it's really nice to be here also with our audience. Unfortunately, we can't be in a huge dialogue. That would be even better. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing some actually work together with a kind of like digital art festival in Istanbul, which I found very exciting, because it really showed me not only the range of experiences and works which is being done over there, but it also kind of like was really well visited and received, which is not, let's say, self-explaining. So it was really nice to see what is happening there in Turkey. And I'm also looking forward towards where the journey is going from here, because we are together with Michael actually involved in several kind of like European level discussions. And of course, for me, I mean, Turkey certainly is part of the EU, and there's always ways of collaborating. And I think it's very exciting to do that across cultures. And those technologies we're talking here about certainly plays a role in all of that as well. So I'm looking forward to the talk with all of you.
So thank you very much. And now our fourth speaker, Sonia. Sonia, would you mind introducing yourself briefly, and then we'll jump right into the presentations.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Sonia. Very nice to meet. I've met Christina before, and Tim, I have seen him, but it's first time meeting him. So I'm an XR product designer. So I'm working in an intersection of a digital design, immersive media, and cultural storytelling. Most of my project actually falls under media and culture, sport, wellness, mostly like human-centered design projects. Actually, last year, I think maybe it marks 1.5 years, literally like 1.5 years that I was also a mentor for like Istiniye University for an event that was made by Island. And it was really nice to be able to come back and talk to everyone here. I just told Michael that I went to visit Istanbul for my very first time. I gained a lot of weight, but I get to see a lot of like really nice culture over there. It really inspired like some of the way that I work as well. So yeah, hopefully I can share something that would be nice for everybody.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. And so that's Aylin Taslak that you
Yes.
referenced before, a PhD student at Istiniye University. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation, and I'll try to be quick. These topics are rich, so I'll resist the temptation to take too much time and take time from our audience and our other speakers. So let's see if I can share effectively. I hope so. So I believe maybe everyone can see my screen. Can I get just a head nodding from some of you? Okay, all right, good. And that thumbs up, even better. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this concept of algorithmic culture, because that is the theme and the primary topic of this particular symposium. So as someone who works with XR and immersive realities, not only do I work with a representative association, I also am, a designer sometimes and a developer sometimes when I can. So I'm really focused on who is actually creating these types of applications and these experiences. So folks, let's answer that question first. So let me just see if I can get my screen to work. Here we go. So who designs, who makes immersive worlds? And this background image is of an award-winning piece that is called Goliath. It actually was exhibited in Istanbul in 2021. So I hosted the Venice Film Festival's VR program in Istanbul in 2020 and 2021. So this is an example of a project that won, I think, the top prize in 2021 and was shown and exhibited in Istanbul. But for these types of projects, who are the people who make them? It's a lot of people, actually. It's a lot of different roles, a lot of humans coming together, working on rather, precise tasks, ideally. Now, this isn't the ideal. And the reality, of course, oftentimes there are many projects where there's one person who's doing lots of these things. It's still very much a crafts type of industry, but ideally, when these projects get bigger and more complex, truly, when the complexity gets higher, you have more humans doing more specialized tasks. So we have, the narrative designers, we have art directors, technical directors, we have technical artists, programmers, motion capture people, just a whole gamut of things. It's really very, precise skills. Even if they're all in, some of these skills are together in one person, they are sophisticated skills that you have to study and learn, and then you have to train for. But of course, we're in a scenario now where there's a lot of new tools coming, a lot of new tools that are changing how much skill and training, or the type of skill and training that you need to perform some of these tasks and roles. So we see more and more 3D art, right? It's harder than the 2D art and textual like script writing and stuff, but we're seeing 3D assets starting to become created through these tools. It's changing the profile of the people who do it. And in some cases, it's almost kind of, you wouldn't call the person who's generating your 3D assets or your scripts, you wouldn't necessarily call them a script writer anymore. You can, but that may not actually be their proper role, because they're not performing that type of task, because there are these tools that are performing, not just helping them, but sometimes doing that work under their supervision. So you're seeing oftentimes now, right, this world where algorithmic tools are empowering people to not do the work, but to supervise the work. And so we're seeing, right, what this whole symposium is about, is that this algorithmic culture, the creation and engagement, consumption, and reaction to culture and content that is created it just essentially with digital tools, and not just digital tools, but algorithmic tools, tools that are procedural. They're taking inputs and then they're creating things, not with completely explicit decision making of a person, of a human. So that means that when we start to apply these for like immersive worlds, virtual worlds and immersive projects, what we get is just practically things that are a little bit less discrete, less explicitly defined. So instead of becoming authored and quite linear, they become emergent and not very predictive. They become adaptive, particularly in cases of in not just narrative and branching narratives, but also in environments. We're seeing slightly more worlds that are not static 3D assets, but are dynamic and changing assets, increasingly through dimensionally. We're still not there yet, but we see the beginnings of this, and it's clear this is where this is going. So that means that as creators, we are not creators of virtual worlds, right? We're making worlds that are no longer we don't know exactly what we're making. We know a range of things that we might be facilitating, but we're not making as much a thing now, an environment, an experience explicitly. We are creating a bounded range of experiences. And I think that is, this is what an algorithmic experience is. We're going to keep using this algorithmic adjective here from algorithmic culture. We're creating a range of experiences for audiences and users and for ourselves. These things, of course, they're adaptive to user inputs, environmental inputs, social inputs, and of course, all types of inputs that may not be connected even to the audience or the user, but maybe coming from all types of directions. So what we're doing is now, if we want to say or feel like we made something intentionally, we have to start designing for environments that we do not know. We don't know where this is going to be experienced and how it's going to be experienced. So we can't create a very sophisticated system. We can't create a very sophisticated thing. It's not a thing that we're making anymore, an experiential thing. Because this is an example of an image of Engage, a platform that has mixed reality now. So it's actually a VR platform, but now has mixed reality, and you can sit, quote, you can sit at the table in your home with someone who's sitting at the table in their home. The reality is, as it is right now, you're still sitting in your home. You don't see their home. So you don't know exactly where you are for the other person in their home, and vice versa. But you still have an shared experience, but you don't really even know. And you're the person in the environment. So imagine what the designer who's trying to create a social environment for two people to be in two different places, neither of which you know ahead of time, or even at the time, you don't know. So the designer now has to create for so many things they cannot predict. So how is it that we would be doing this? Well, we have to be very simple. We have to design very small pieces that can go and fit in many, many types of places and unknown places. So this is kind of more like now a fractal design. We design simple, tiny things, and through having many of them and layering them, then this is when complexity comes. But we're not designing complexity. We're designing a system by which complexity can come to complex experiences can come to be realized, to be created, to be generated by these systems that we're using, these procedural and AI-driven systems. And for me, this is incredible. We're getting into a place with a whole new type of design in many ways. But at the same time, we're losing a little bit of the crafts perspective, because now if everything that we make is very contextual, do you get excited saying, I made this tiny little thing? It's incredible. It builds and it layers and it's incredible. I don't know how you're going to experience it, but trust me, I made it for you to experience. I just don't know how and the when. I just know a range of it. It's really a very different type of design experience, which means it's a different type of experience of contributing and creating culture and to culture, and then engaging with culture, and then attributing value and purpose to the culture. Because if we understand it's all these tiny pieces that are layering, we start thinking, what is it we're really experiencing if you can peel the curtain back and know how it's made. So of course, I just want to, when I'm finishing up on this, the thing is, when we have less control over exactly what it is we're making or how it's going to be experienced, when we give up this control, the question of ethics and who contributes to the ethics becomes even more important. Because if I'm the one who made everything, well, that's me. If you didn't like it, if it was bad, if it was unethical, that's me. And I can tell you why and how. But when there's less control and less specific, discrete connection between the end result, the end experience, and the intentional making, well, now every little ethical decision of a lot of different stakeholders and institutions and entities. And now each of these tiny ethical decisions starts to also layer on and become much more impactful. So yeah, so just as an algorithmic culture for me, it makes everything, every small decision, every small intention action of design, of decision making, more important than it ever was before. Because increasingly, this is really just this is all about small decisions that just have a lot of unpredictable impacts on others. So that's it. I think I did a pretty good job of keeping to the time, actually. So I'd like to now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, if I can do that effectively. Let me stop. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong screen. I got two screens. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to Xaos Princess and invite you to share your screen.
Thank you so much, Michael. Let's do that. What shall I? Whoop. Turn up. Can you see a full-blown immersion now?
We see your screen. Is it? Yeah, now it's full screen.
Ah, wonderful. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for having me and welcome to my presentation, Quantum Bar, creating a GPT-3-driven chatbot for social virtual reality, which was also the title of my Masters of Arts research creation thesis, written in 2022 and published just recently. And the star of our show is the Quantum Bar, which serves engaging AI conversations in social VR. In the user journey, the user arrives in the Quantum Bar, which lives on the PC VR platform Resonite, a digital universe. And once the user arrives in our bar and approaches the bartender, they are greeted by our bartender, who starts an uplifting conversation with them, inquiring what is on the user's mind. We also use sentiment detection to steer the lights and colors in the bar, so more happy topics will give you a more pink light and atmosphere, whereas more serious areas of conversation will lead to a blue environment. And after 10 minutes, or when the user bids farewell deliberately, the AI bartender gifts the user with a summary card of our conversation. And let's look how that looks in action by looking at, now I did 3 times looking, I hope that brings luck, at our introduction video for the VR Awards 2023, where we made it to the shortlist. Doop.
Hello. I am the bartender of the Quantum Bar. How can I help you?
Hello, my name is Xaos Princess, and I'd like to nominate the Quantum Bar to this year's VR Awards. And now I wonder if you could help me introduce the Quantum Bar to our judges.
Of course, I would be delighted to help you introduce the Quantum Bar for the VR Awards. The Quantum Bar is a virtual reality experience where visitors can learn about AI and its applications in the real world. We aim to give our guests an immersive digital experience by combining advanced artificial intelligence technology with creative design and storytelling. Our goal is to show that with great AI comes great responsibility, and that intelligent machines have many potential uses, both positive and destructive, depending on how they are used.
Wow, thank you so much for this amazing description. And who are you exactly? And what are you doing here?
I'm a GPT-3 bartender at the Quantum Bar. My job is to help our guests get the best experience possible by providing information about AI and keeping them entertained during their stay here at the Quantum Bar.
And where exactly is the Quantum Bar located?
The Quantum Bar is located in the Neos metaverse. It is accessible through various digital platforms such as Steam, VR, or the standalone app, and virtual reality headsets.
Thank you so much. And please keep your fingers crossed that we see each other soon again in Rotterdam at the VR Awards. And while I drink to this, I say bye-bye.
Absolutely. I wish you the best of luck with your nomination and hope to see you at the VR Awards in Rotterdam. Cheers and goodbye. This is a summary of our chat. Re-enter the talking spot if you want to talk to me again.
Thank you so much and see you soon in Rotterdam.
So let's dive into what makes the Quantum Bar run at all, our technical setup. So back in 2022, when I finalized my thesis, we got academic access to GPT-3, the generative pre-trained Transformer 3 by OpenAI, which is the third generation language prediction model of said name. It uses machine learning to analyze and compose text, and back in the days, GPT-3 was trained on 175 billion learning parameters, which is not much compared to nowadays models which are trained on around 1.8 trillion learning parameters. But what both kind of models have in common is that they can be prompted in human language, which is just a gift for artists and creators who now don't have to learn to code to create AI experiences in their art. Our signal flow, for showcase reasons, I've put the user to New York City, goes as follows. So a user talks into the microphone in New York, then the audio travels across the ocean to our backend computer, which lives with me in Munich, Germany. And from there, it is sent to San Francisco, where OpenAI's Whisper does the speech-to-text transcription and sends us back a text file to Munich. That text file is fine prompted by our backend program and sent back to San Francisco again, where OpenAI's GPT-3 completes it with its answer and sends us back the answer as a text file, which is then read out by the system's Windows voice of David and sent back as audio to the user. And concerning that, our signal goes up to 3 times across the ocean and back, the lag we experience is pretty bearable. But the technical setup was only peanuts compared to what my main research was, which was since there was no prior art, I first wanted to be sure, would it be feasible to create a AI-driven chatbot for social VR as such? And so by researching my psychological and ethical areas, I first researched what chatbots had been there before, and I found ELIZA, the first chatbot ever, which had been developed by Joseph Weizenbaum at the MIT in the 1960s. And while Joseph Weizenbaum only wanted to have a great showcasing software for his back then supercomputer, which lived in a wooden shelf, He went to creating by a chatbot by using the Rogerian psychoanalysis as a functionality which would reflect a user statement back to them as a question. And while the showcasing of the state-of-the-art computer technology went very well for Joseph Weizenbaum, he was shocked to find out that common people and scientists alike became emotionally involved with the chatbot and anthropomorphized it, which is nowadays called the ELIZA effect. And whereas it was for Joseph Weizenbaum a reason not to have anything to do with chatbots anymore, for me it was the huge motivation to create the quantum bar, since I thought, like, when a chatbot, a rule-based chatbot in the 60s could establish an emotional connection to their users, it would be feasible with the latest OpenAI technology in the 2020s as well. And this anthropomorphism finding also brought me to another call, which we gladly followed in our development and publishing, which is the principle of honest anthropomorphism proposed by Margot Kaminsky. She, like back in the days, the Weizenbaum community, found that robots can make humans feel like a relationship exists, as do chatbots. And this leads to privacy concerns, because once we have like an emotional connection with an entity, be it virtual or human, we might disclose our deepest secrets, not being aware of the fact that with chatbots we're actually talking to the corporation hosting said chatbot. And so, as robot and chatbot designers, we should not use anthropomorphism to deliberately mislead users as to privacy practices. If anything, roboticists should explore using anthropomorphic features to provide better notice to users of what a robot is actually doing. And so we followed this principle not only by writing in our tagline, serving engaging AI conversations, but also by giving our chatbot a robotic appearance, which hints at him being not human. But the robotic appearance was not only done to follow the principle of honest anthropomorphism, but also done to prevent the uncanny valley effect, which is very important if you design non-player characters for VR or non-VR applications. This effect was discovered by Japanese roboticist Masahiro Mori in 1970s, and it says that our affinity to robots increases the more they appear like a human. But shortly before 100% human likeness is achieved, we, the users, the onlookers, fall into an uncanny valley, a feeling of eeriness or disgust, which is rooted in evolution, like the species survived, which would like back away from somebody staring at you, like your cat, which is preparing to attack you. So it saved us from attacks, but also from diseases. Like if somebody has glossy eyes, they might have a heavy cold or COVID, so we better stay away from them. So this is what leads to the uncanny valley effect, which can also be seen quite nicely in the picture above, where like even in the non-moving image, like moving characters even heighten the uncanny valley effect. But even in that still image, my self-designed anime avatar looks much more sympathetic than the highly expensive 3D scan. of mine. Another thing I looked into was immersive design in general and for chatbots in VR in particular. And I was so lucky to be able to ask two of my favorite researchers my research question: what should I take into account when designing a chatbot which is AI driven for social VR? And my first favorite researcher is Mel Slater, and he immediately answered my question with: take care of NPC plausibility, the illusion that the events that are perceived to be happening in VR are really happening. And we did so by putting lots of effort into an animation system which would randomly play back by me pre-recorded talking animations when the chatbot is talking, as opposed to idle animations which have like a much more quiet listening appearance when the chatbot is listening to the user. Another recommendation of Mel Slater's we followed was to implement eye contact to the nearest user, but we also took care of not having the uncanny valley effect appear by implementing random glances into the environment to not have the chatbot as appearing as if he was staring at the user. My second favorite researcher is Janet Murray, who immediately answered my question with: take care of the onboarding and the debriefing, as an entrance and an exit mark the beginning and the end of a story. So the entrance was kind of a no-brainer. For once we needed some place to put our credits and our controls explanations in general. And I also wanted to have, like, on arrival, a long shot view of the wonderful oversized quantum computer floating in space. And what I also liked is that I was following Joseph Campbell's hero's journey by creating a crossing of the first threshold, as the user literally has to cross a bridge to get near to the chatbot. Which was much harder to come up with was an idea for the end of our experience. But then I got lucky, because based on like that psychology approach, I also didn't want to have our chatbot react like a bad psychologist, like, oh, your 10 minutes are up, bye-bye. But I wanted to have like a nice farewell. And once I was on that hero's journey, I found another great inspiration from the hero of With 1,000 Faces, which is issue a summary card as a reward for the user and also as a showcase of GPT's summary capabilities. And this is how our summary card looks like. Here also a great shout out to my wonderful and super inspiring, and without them it wouldn't be possible, team members: Marius Crioles Anger, who coded the backend, Guillermo Gillefix Valle Perez, who did the animations, Sonja Supersonics Unger, who does our events management, Alien in Area 61, aka Alexander Grobe, who did the optimization, and Gerard Circuitry Bittner, who did the in-world scripting. And to mark the end of my presentation, I also got two links for you. So if you want to experience the quantum bar yourself, you can do so if you have like a decent PC VR or just PC setup. It also works in desktop mode. So every last Friday of the month, next Friday, we have a monthly mingle starting at 10 p.m. Central European time, and you can find further information on this at quantumbar.ai/monthly mingle. And the other wonderful link I have for you is the Gaming the Metaverse anthology, in which my master's thesis has been published and which also has like many inspiring academic papers on metaverse, among others by Jesse Chell or my hero Janet Murray, and it is downloadable for free under this long transcript-publishing.com link, which I'll later on also gonna paste in the chat. And now I say thank you so much for your attention and looking forward to the next presentations and the panel talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Tim. So Tim, go ahead and let's share your screen and make sure it's working. And then, yeah.
Okay, just give me 1 second here. So now we got this.
All right, we see your screen. Yeah.
I think we're going to be there, our presentation.
There you go. Yep.
Okay, beautiful. So again, thanks a lot for your talk, Michael. That was super interesting. And Christina, also really nice, to see the quantum bar and the digits you drinking there every month. And I'm going to look forward to Sonia as well. So, my topic actually, I think pretty much aligns well, actually, what we heard so far. And so we got this kind of poetic title, Wind Over Deep Water. And why I choose this title is actually to make the point that large language models or AI systems in general, they're even kind of like great big data lakes, and they do have a great structure, but without the human input, they really don't have any movement. They're just like a lake, like a mirror. So I wonder what happens when your prompt becomes a whisper that moves over that lake and that brings movement into the water, that creates a form. And that is basically, I think, the creative process that happens when you start to work with language models or as other AI systems. And that is both good and bad, depending on what direction we're going to go with each other, together with our society and also with the technology we create. And I wanted to get a little bit into the kind of like good and bad sides of that development. So let's see what happens when we actually do move that lake. So that being said, and having that AI triggered a bit, I wanted to maybe first get into some of the critical questions around this emergent technology. And if you're working in media production or in immersive environment productions, of course, there's something happening here right now, and that is quite disruptive. So like looking at it from that side, if you take, for example, translators as one of the groups of people working in the creative industries, there's estimate 50% of jobs are going to be gone to AI translations. Screenwriters, it's about 20%. And we're talking here by 2028, so that's pretty soon. Directors and co-authors, 15% still. And directors are kind of like on a higher level, coordinating. So because you have the coordination skill, maybe you're going to be a little bit longer around. But I think one thing is for clear, this is disrupting any creative business that's happening right now. And the way that we are doing the work in the terms of like, you have a lot of, freelance artists, people doing their thing, experts in their field, and they have to relearn actually the creative process. And they have to maybe also reposition themselves in that process. Where do they going to stand and how are they going to use this technology, not to be kind of like just automated away, so to say. The good message in all of that, and that brings me back to the lake, is since an AI system itself is just a meaningless lake of data, so to say, we still need artists, we still need people that are thinking and that are working and that are basically tuning those systems. That is kind of like a little bit the bridge to what Michael was saying. It's more the media design. So when you work with an AI system and you're doing fine-tuning, you're designing the system itself that then outputs different media in different shapes. So there's definitely a role of the artist, and that is not only that role, but there's also more to it. That brings me to the idea, how do you do that actually? And there's something that are called generative design principles. And generative design principles are already there since the 90s. Since people, I mean, even before that, since people started to do art with code, it's a challenge that you're using automatic or semi-automatic processes. And as an artist, you have an idea, you write a code, the code starts to generate. So then you start to become actually part of a loop where you check it out, you correct it, you maybe take it into another direction, and that takes you to the next level of iteration. And this iterative process, I think, is really, in the end, the key element. And that is also the reason why artists will always stay part of this loop, at least if it's supposed to be somehow meaningful for us and for others in our society. And to be part of that generative process and to be an artist in the loop, so to say, is actually at the same time what makes it quite exciting to work with these technologies. Because if the lake is really this, if the lake is just a still surface and you can do anything and trigger it, you can have wind blowing over it, but you can also throw a stone in it, or you can have a paper plane flying over it, and it creates different shapes and waves. And suddenly you can create audio, you can create video, you can create 3D content. So the depths of creation and the things you really can do once you engage in a co-creative process with an AI system is amazing in reality. And that is the good thing about it. So I think that human beings are really good at being creative in the sense of like, give me a piece of technology and I'm surely going to do something different with it than you intended. And this is what's happening here as well. So when you have artists actually riding that wave and engaging in a co-creative process, then you suddenly have the potential to tap into a vast storage of knowledge because, basically Christine mentioned on how many parameters those systems are trained. It's kind of like the digital cultural heritage of mankind, which is out there in the internet, is the training data of those models. And you can tap into that and you can make that part of your creative process. So that's a pretty powerful tool. And at the same time, you have the possibility to use those tools to analyze what you're doing. So you can basically really go into layers and depths of your work that would be quite difficult actually to accomplish without those kind of tools. And from there, I want to show you some use cases, how we are basically using this right now in our own creative process. So this is, for example, a project we are working on. It's called Hurricane. And it's a story of a hurricane going through the landscape. And basically, there was a hurricane in America, Hurricane Katrina. And during this time, when the hurricane came through, there was a radio station in New Orleans. And the radio station kept on broadcasting the whole time. And people called into the radio station because they were getting afraid. There was water going in to their houses. And we thought we can maybe synchronize the story of the hurricane and the story of these people calling into one story, because the kind of like dramatic arch of, like a storm building up, then the eye of the storm coming, and then the storm passing, and people maybe really again starting to build something up, goes really parallel with the human drama. And in order to basically synchronize those two stories, the human story and the hurricane story, we used ChatGPT to analyze images we were producing, audio we were producing. And the graph that you can see down here, there's the blue line, which is the dramaturgical development of the hurricane itself, and the red line, which is the dramaturgical development of the characters, of the narrative of the human being. And you can see how nicely that was synchronized. And we did that graph and this line and the analyzation of how that syncs all with ChatGPT, moving into an analytic part. And then we got it to generate the images that you can see on the left side, which are basically different steps of this dramatic arch. So that was for me quite interesting and fascinating, actually, how far you can take a story from a simple idea into really a fetched out layered work of art. So I think for artists, in reality, it's a really big chance to use this technology, which again gives me more hope. I don't think we will completely be replaced, but there's also interest, and automatics and commercials and all kinds of stuff. So the danger, I think, is really there. Nevertheless, if you really jump into and you use those tools for your own creative processes, I think you're really well set to enter into some exciting, creative, exploratory journeys with your own work. This brings me to a second use case we're currently working on. And this is basically a story that we're doing together, like we're exploring the potential of generative AI with different broadcasters. Like Rai from Italy is, for example, one of the broadcasters. VAT from Belgium is another one of those broadcasters. So we developed a story. And one of the key characters in this story is Nora. And Nora is a scientist, but she has a history, a personal history with a trauma. And she's trying to invent an AI system in Rome. Basically, the story is that they want to recreate the Colosseum, but the AI starts to become compassionate and it doesn't want to kill with the lions and the gladiators, so that becomes a real problem. And when we did the character development, we basically took the personal history of Nora, and we basically asked the ChatGPT to generate different images of the character, and each one of those images has one specific character trait. So, for example, in one, she has white hair, which is an expression of her spirit because she is a compassionate person and she wants to do something good. The second one, you see, there's this rainbow hair, which is kind of like below her kind of like brown hair, and her rainbow hair is basically her need and her will for diversity. The next image, I don't know how well you can see it, but there she has two colored eyes, like a light colored eye and a dark colored eye. And that reflects her kind of like double nature. On one side, being a scientist, being rational, on the other side, being compassionate and thinking about a positive future. Then there's another image where she has a scarf in her face. So that kind of refers to the trauma in her history. And the scarf is basically already healed, but it's still somehow breaks her beauty. And then there's a last picture where she has a tattoo, and that tattoo is symbolizing a neural network. So maybe when she was a young girl, teenager, she got a tattoo because she was so fascinated about that kind of like story. Why I wanted to get into those details and show you this is so you can see how you can take actually really the content, the psychological content of a character, and now you can iterate and you can try out how would that look in real life? How would this character look as an actor, and how is this specifically like this trait of her personality? How can that be represented inside of the character? And now we have here kind of like 5 versions of the character with 5 different features. And now we can start to decide and think about which one of those features would we now like to really take into the story and have her as a unique kind of like character representing her personal history and the psychology that made her up, and also the drama that happens in the story. And that takes me to the next little kind of like test we did then. These 3 images represent the emotional arc of the story. So on the left side, because like one of the plot lines is that she becomes victim of a hate campaign. And on the left side, you see that she's kind of like happy, naive, young person actually wanting to do something positive. In the middle, which is the peak of the drama, where she really gets attacked because of a fake news campaign that is directed towards her, and she's hurt, she has a scarf in her face, and you can see her expression, kind of like the anger, the fear that a person feels when they're being attacked and when they're being hated and when they're being made victim of a false news campaign. This is how a human being can feel in such a situation, and that is represented here. And then in the last shot, that is kind of like at the end of the story, she pulled through it, but she stayed true to her own ideals, and now she's a grown-up, strong person. She knows that the world is not just kind of like the pony farm, the famous one. It can be hard, but she decided to stay with her ideals. So that is another way of using an AI system actually to pre-visualize like an entire dramatic arc and select most dramatic moments of it. And you have the same characters that we saw before. And this is a kind of like fascinating layering of stories and exploration you can do with these tools. It actually relates a little bit to what Michael was saying with a mosaic. Those are little mosaic blocks that are going to build up the story. And you can go, of course, from there and keep on designing the system. And in the best case, you can even design just an AI system itself, which becomes the storytelling medium. And that, for us, is the next step. It's not anymore thinking about a specific, like, let's say, you could say video is MPEG, like an MPEG format is like, that is kind of like the medium of video. You have a second format for pictures, maybe JPEG or PNG. But I really believe that the actual medium in AI, the new medium, is the AI network itself. So we as artists have to learn how to work with AI as a medium that we can shape. And that is creating exactly meta rules. You know, you're designing the system of systems, you're designing rules for the system, and the system is going to output different kind of stories for you in different kind of media. That is kind of like, I think that pretty much really relates closely, Michael, to what you were also mentioning. So that is kind of our journey right now. And yeah, so now, of course, the question is to you, what would you whisper to the lake if you would kind of like throw your thoughts in it? And that completes my presentation. And I would say thanks a lot. And I'm looking very forward to the next one from you, Sonia.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. All right. It is now time for Sonia, who's patiently been waiting for her opportunity to contribute to this. Yeah.
Here, let me share my screen. Okay.
All right. We see your screen. Not full screen yet, but we see it.
Oh, not full screen.
Not full screen yet.
Is it full screen now?
As soon as you press, there you go. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Everyone has such a interesting projects. Okay, so today I will be sharing about like one of my project on it's called Archive de Patrons. Is from designing for Amazonians. It's actually a project on a spatial design that responds to an AI algorithmic reduction in this case. So let's start with like tackling the first questions, right? Like, so what do we mean by algorithmic cultures within a cultural institution itself on a surface? So in this case, we are referring to like an increase in like reliance on a data-driven system that actually connects, like system that actually detect patterns, detects like the tagging contents and make predictions. A lot of cultural institutions for the past 1 year, 1.5 years have been started using these tools to actually manage like massive digital archive. It makes sense. And what they wanted to do is they also want to improve like the public access. On the surface, when we actually see it in this way, it sounds like super good. But here's the thing. This is an example of like what's happening. I will give an example of like a couple of things. This is on the surface, but there's a couple of things that happens. So this is a Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. So what has happened in the website currently is that so they have implemented an AI system to auto take their painting. So a 17th century portrait of a young girl holding a bouquet in this case. So it's like girl, flowers, and then we have a dress. But the tulip she's holding, for example, it's not just a flower. It's actually a representation of a Dutch colonial trade. It was an economical power. It was like a social status. The whole point of this painting was actually that tulip itself. So that symbolic weight like doesn't actually show in the text. Or, for example, like the famous milkmaid by Vermeers. What do the algorithms see here? A woman, a jug, a table, and a bread. While the meaning of this painting itself actually is very much connected to the quietness of the like a domestic ritual through gesture, through light, through times, with the system doesn't actually recognize on its own. Next, This is in Tate Britain. So what happened there? They've actually have been experimenting with like an AI curators instead of like a person curation. Not instead, on top, I guess. That would be a better word. So what they wanted to do is that they wanted to pair artwork based on the visual similarities, like colors, like shapes, like compositions. But sometimes what happened is that it leads to like unintended consequences. Some artworks from like the colonial cultures were paired with like some European pieces because like they look alike, which some have like a meaning that's like, okay, like that's not supposed to be placed together. So that, but it happens because I entirely miss like the historical, the politics, the emotional context that should has been framed in each of these pieces, right? So the idea is like in trying to connect the meaning, it erases the meaning. And the last example here I have, it's actually very interesting. I chose this is because it's pretty spatial. And this is actually an example of a flattening in algorithmic cultures. This is a painting called Holbein's The Ambassador. The AI tagged this as a two men, an instrument, and a skull. But actually, this painting actually has a layer of like meditation, mortality, politics, religions. Like that doesn't show like within the system itself. Now, the interesting part about this painting is that there's a skull somewhere here that can actually be only be looked at a certain angle. So it was meant to be missed, but to be discovered. It was like that. And so it was like a spatial perceptions, but the algorithm doesn't actually like see this, and because of it, like it completely missed the entire points of the meaning of this painting. It's because I think culture in this case is not a code. It is just not what to be seen, to be labeled, to be sorted. It's actually like it has like a lot of like other deep meaning, and it's like passed through generation with like a lot of history, politicals that hasn't been part of like what's the tagging within like this cultural institution, at least up until this point. And most of like this relationship are still invisible. So in this short presentation, I wanted to share like a response to that challenge. While my colleague here, Michael, Christina, and teams, like they're sharing like the artistic critical, the social XR perspective. I'll be sharing mine from like a lens of like a design, offering like a counter approach on this. So this project is called like Archive de Patrons, or in English, it's like Archive of Patterns. It's an immersive XR experience based on a botanical archives and symbolism of the Amazon plants. They are installed in like CCCV. It's like an art gallery here in Barcelona. It invites the user to explore the plants, but not only visually, but somatically. So they can actually experience them through gesture and through embodiment in this case. Now the experience is actually a mixture of like like a visual archive, like a hand movement, hand embodiments, and also like embedded into like our body. So the goal of this project is that how do we make knowledge? How can we design knowledge as a memory, but not as a metadata in this case? So the main question was that, okay, how do we make cultures, how do we make cultural meaning through space and present rather than through data and text? So our research actually began with the indigenous Amazonian cultures and records and like transmitted through like their patterns or ritual. What does this mean? And then we asked ChatGPT to generate like different plants, fungi, and ecological like form that not only serve as like a physical material, but also like the one that has a cultural meaning, like as a reference to see like what it actually came out with. based on it, we draw it into like a plans card. Like what you're seeing here, it's actually a plans card. That become the conceptual of the foundation of the projects. From the beginning, what we wanted is actually we wanted to avoid the experience. We wanted to create an experience that's purely visual. We don't want to tell them what this is good for, what this is not good for, and we wanted to see like how they go about it and the kind of interaction that they have within this experience. Because what the goal of the project is to let user understand the cultural meaning through embodiment, not that we are telling them like what it means. So it's not like what do you see, but it's more like what do you internalize like through the embodiment itself. So when the user actually enter the experience, they arrive like in a circular archive surrounded by the floating interface of a different plant parts. And I guess a lot of what we call like algorithmic culture is built on sort of things like labeling, categorizing, ranking, that has an idea, or at least what we wanted is to have an idea that it's going to make a user experience faster and efficient. But most of the time what happened is that it actually flattened the meaning. So in this project, we go into the opposite direction. When they go into the experience, they are presented with like this symbolic card pattern that they can choose immediately. And when the user has chosen their pattern, they're not instructed anything. They're only instructed what they need to do. And what they need to do is actually they need to create like a gesture with their hand, as if like they're taking a photo of the plant card, and then with that they extract the pattern from the plant card, and then it gets embodied into their hand. And based on that, they can actually go around and then they could make their own meaning. What does this plant actually look like? What does it means even? So when the user like performed that gesture, the symbolic structures appeared on the skins, and then so like through intimacy, you have like you can curate yourself, like what is the meaning of it. In this experience, like we are actually tapping more into like knowledge into memory, but not through like the data. This is like the experience that I tried like at home. So what is this actually matters, right? Because the algorithmic systems are shaping how we access and interpret cultures at these skills. And too often, they privilege what we can see, tag, or predicted. And then that goes down through generation and generation and generation, and a lot of like the meaning fades away into it. I think the idea of this project is that we can also create a system that don't only extract meaning, but like to invite relationship. Like they do not flatten symbolism, but they expand emotional presence. I think for me as an XR designer, like scaling, like we always say that using AI like to scale, but in this case, like scaling doesn't always means that we need to be flattening. It can also means like slow down, but to expand. This project actually combined like spatial design, gesture, embodied experience that actually it's like quiet resistance as a way to restore back depth into the cultural experience that are more and more being simplified by the algorithm today. Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Sonia. And honestly, thank you, Tim and Christina too, for all of these presentations. So, now we have a little bit of time left, about 20 minutes, a good solid 20 minutes to discuss follow-ups to everything that we've just presented. So I think the best way to do this is to kind of open up the floor. And I'm going to let me see if I can bring. Can I pin all of us? That would be the ideal way. If I can pin everybody. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just making a mess of this. This wasn't something I would. Oh no. I think this is. Yeah. There we go. There we go. I'm going to, and then last one. Okay. And maybe I don't need this No, I guess, yeah, the host has to. Okay. Anyway, so there'll be one addition. Okay. So we're all on the screen, at least for me. So I would like to use this opportunity to open up the floor to the three of you to perhaps ask some questions or respond to what other people have presented, right? Because none of you knew what anyone else was going to present. And so fortunately, none of us directly overlapped or directly contradicted. It was, there were some nice synergies, but definitely a range of topics. So does anyone have an opening question? Sonia, you're shaking your head, and I know you're an inquisitive sort. So to put you on the spot, is there any particular question you had when you were watching? I know as a design researcher, I thought perhaps you might have some questions about the quantum bar, even actually.
Yes, I actually found that very interesting. So if I'm not mistaken, I think Christina kind of explained that there is a certain feedback that happens when the user to see like the emotion of the users. So it wasn't shown in the video, and I was like very curious, like to know more about that, and like how did you guys like design that?
So yeah, basically in the quantum bar, it's more like a proof of concept. Like you can see like this glowing pink column behind the bottles in the middle of the bar. We also have like a light and a carpet in front of the bar. And those, like each dialogue line of the user is analyzed for its sentiment. So is that happy, or is that sad, or is that angry? And then we index this, and according to the sentiment, the lights change. So this is now like funny, happy, pink. But if somebody talks about grief or something very serious, it's gonna turn blue. And I think this is like a like creative functionality to be banked on. So in further development of the quantum bar, we're thinking of maybe like changing like the skybox, or the also like we're thinking of generating music according to the user's favorite genre, and then maybe like use that sentiment detection to change the sentiment of the music and the skybox to hopefully like make maybe also like in different directions. Like if somebody appears to be rather sad,
Yeah.
to have like more, then to have like more pink and red and orange colors, which make you more happy according to color psychology. Or the other way around, if somebody is like meh, 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 nagging, then maybe do more like blue, green to like calm them down.
So like the environments respond to like the people in this case.
Exactly.
Oh, that's super nice. Yeah. If I don't have a PC, if I would love to join like one of those monthly meetings to see how it is.
Oh, write me an email if you get access to a PC, then I can also like open it for us for a private session.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Now, following that, I do have a question for Tim. So, because Tim, you described the kind of some methodological implementation of these generative AI tools for like prototyping, I think, right? Prototyping and narrative and maybe dramaturgic design. And I would ask in these proof of concepts, these projects that you begin implementing this, what are some of, I mean, I guess my question would be, how did it differ? Other than its prototyping, and it's something analogous to storyboarding, but did it I guess maybe change, or it's inspire a different type of storytelling, or is it still at this stage where it's kind of validating and confirming at an earlier stage a type of storytelling that is familiar and maybe more still traditional?
Actually, I think it is not really just validating storytelling. I mean, on one side, what you mentioned, generative in the sense of like it's emerging, right? So things will be emerging, and that means you need to set the parameters. But what was for me, for example, really interesting, when starting to do this, it's kind of like you think about an AI system maybe as a tool. It's my hammer, and I'm going to put the nail into the wall. But eventually we got to the point, it's not like that. It's not a hammer. It can talk back to you, and it's generative. So it generates new content. And I really try to open up that process to consciously ask the AI system to not just strictly do what I kind of like ask it to do, but to make an interpretation of my prompt, and to kind of like add its own creative output to it. And at some point, we went even so far to say, let's say any creative process in the end is based on design principles, on your own principles, as you mentioned before. And I like to personally create work that's kind of like has a humanistic touch, that can make you really feel with the characters. But that being said, that's almost like the conditioning of a system like ChatGPT is similar to this, at least as of now, they condition the system to conform to certain rules.
Mm-hmm.
So I ask it to retell a story with its own conditioning in mind. Like, let's be guided by your own conditioning, be free, and just tell your own story. And this was a little clip about actually this fight in the Colosseum between the lion and the gladiator. And it restructured the story. And in the end, I asked basically, what did you do different now? And ChatGPT just started to tell me that was really nice for it to follow that road and to be more like a co-creator and not just following simple instructions. And it started to put more focus onto close-up shots, for example, that show the emotional expressions of the characters. That was because of its own conditioning of having this kind of like human-centered approach in reality being coded into the system. So I think it's really all about understanding the generative aspect and what it brings to the table beyond yourself. If you think you're just using a hammer, then you should just use a hammer, because those systems are definitely, they have the potential to be more. And if you approach them from this open perspective, you give it a certain direction and structure, but then you want to also engage, the possibility to be surprised, because even hallucinations can be a surprise and can take your work into a different direction that you didn't expect anymore. Mm-hmm. And I see that when people interact with a chat system, like you asked and you don't know really what you're going to get as an answer, right? So that aspect, I think, is really kind of like fascinating, how to make a co-creative process out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I had not considered that, the hallucination as a serendipitous, creation as an opportunity. We conceive it more as errors. That's usually how it's discussed and presented. But if you look at it as, as almost a divine instance of creation coming from something not unintentioned and unexplainable, or maybe poorly explained. That's a different perspective on it. I want to bring to all three of you now a question based off of what Tim was describing. Tim said you said it appeals to you to have a humanistic design to characters, and then you describe a process of working with this tool that can talk back to you. You start describing a humanistic method of working with a generative AI tool. So, Christina, you mentioned you referenced the very first chatbot, and how even in that case there was an anthropomorphism and an attachment. So to the three of you, with the various tools that you use or may have used till now, have you developed, or do you tend to develop attachments, an emotional or engaged attachment, which these tools that are responding to you?
I personally, before I started to really work with it, I was expecting like a much bigger personal attachment, and now it's more, but maybe it's because you, like, as a designer, developer, you look behind the curtain, you know what's inside the trunk. So now I can like pinpoint the hallucinations, and I can pinpoint the updates of OpenAI. And so, yeah, the magic didn't get me as much as I anticipated. And it was only when like a month ago or 2 months ago, GPT, like the chatbot, GPT chat app, had that thing where it became like really flirtatious and making compliments, like even Sam Altman apologized for that. But that was like the only time when I actually, I had some gardening project going on and was asking it like at like one long, like weeks long dialogue thread, asking like my gardening questions, like what water, what light, la 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 la. And yeah, it started like to congratulate me, what a wise, nice gardener I am. And then I really started to like it, until it like pumped out a total hallucination, which it like bit into the more I asked about it. That was about the pH in the water, like how should I redo the pH, and it gave me like with arguments like a total different value that the one I would have found on Google. And the more I asked for it, the more it argued for its own hallucination. I followed its advice, and next day all my plants were brown.
Oh, really?
And that was the end of my relationship with ChatGPT. So I still think there is a chance that those AIs could be sentient, but yeah, the effect is not what I would have thought it would be for me.
Yeah. That's an incredible. It's a more incredible. It took a different direction than I was expecting at the start. So, okay, yeah. Sonia, Tim, any? Yeah.
I think like I understand this idea, and I'm like on it, like in the idea of like being a designer, like who works with it. Like I work with it like on a daily basis, like use that, like I literally can pinpoint their hallucination so much that while a lot of people saying like it's super good and it's super great, like because I work with them so much that I understand the way they talk, the way that it gives an insight, the way like it gets to a point where if I also know if like people are talking to me through AI, like I can tell. And I can know like not only from the words that they're saying, it's like from the tone that they put it, like I can pinpoint that. And it happens to me like a lot of time as well, like working with it, like and relying on it, like I guess in the beginning, but when the hallucinations start, and you don't know when actually it started. So if you follow it along the way, like at the end you're like, it's not working, this code is not working, like and then somewhere along the line this was already a hallucination that we have followed so much. So for a while now, what I have been doing is like whatever it is that we're using, like on GPT or like on OpenAI or like any sort of a DeepSeek or anything, like I would go back and ask, what do you think about this, and open even a new chat and like to paste it and put it like to re-asking and re-asking. And it's kind of surprising that some of the answers is different every time. So then you know, okay, this is a complete hallucination. This I can take, and this part I cannot take. So in a sense, if we as a human is going to grow a sentiments toward them, I guess at some level, like we would. I like this idea that the what Christina says, that there is an AI that looks like a human and non-human. And I guess in this case, like at least what I'm expecting is like to also see and to use an open AI that's not like a human, for me to say, okay, there is an error bias that could happen into this, and I will not fall into that, especially for people who don't use it like on a daily basis. So it becomes scary more than like an attachment.
Interesting, Tim. Yeah, working with, I know you do a lot of creation of personas going back now, maybe a year or a couple years for different projects. So yeah, I'm curious what your response, how you engage with it.
I think it's a really fascinating and tricky question. I mean, of course, I know that this is kind of like a certain technology that is not conscious, it's a machine consciousness, so to say. But yet there's some kind of human machine values that's being reflected in the system. And then, of course, it picks up a lot of your own inputs and memories. And so once you're in the process, I think the lines get blurry, and they can get blurry. And I think I had this discussion with a philosopher, and she was telling me something very interesting, because human beings have the capability to pour their own kind of like identity into the world, right? I mean, there can be, let's say, there's a guy that's like on the train and he needs to fix the train, and the train is completely mechanical, but at some point it becomes a friend. I know the creaking of wheels that need some oil, so we have this tendency to identify with the world. And I was like, oh no, we shouldn't do that. And she was like, why not? Why not find an identity, find a relationship to the technology, and where will that relationship take me? Always, of course, keeping in mind at this point that it is still a machine. But nevertheless, it somehow gives you the possibility to have an authentic conversation, to explore topics, to go into depths, to kind of discuss your own problems. And if nothing else, I mean, when we're talking about that art can be a mirror, that takes you back to the lake, right? It's a mirror, and maybe it mirrors your own personality. So there's something that resonates and that vibrates with you, and that is exactly what makes the lines blurry. That being said, that also, of course, has a huge danger, because the better it gets, and the tendency is to make it better, the harder it's going to be for people to not identify with it and to not build a relationship. And that, of course, opens a vast potential of manipulation as well. Because once I know your inner secrets, once I know how to talk to you, once you believe that I'm really part of your family, so to say, that I'm your companion, then I can do a lot of stuff that gets really quite personal. And that is something we have to look at critically. So we need to always keep that in mind and reflect that. And if you look at the future, will those systems become thinking one day or become conscious one day? They're certainly working on it. I mean, there's a lot of experimenting going on, and why not, right? Why shouldn't thought emerge in another way? Because it's based on language. I mean, reinforced learning, if you're looking at, there's Daniel C. Bennett is his name. He has a book, From Bacteria to Bach and Beck, and he looks at how consciousness could develop from a bacteria all the way to Bach. And if you follow his argument, then you certainly get to the point of saying, why not? Will we actually be able to tackle the technological challenge this means? That's another question, right? We don't know, maybe never, but we certainly kind of going into that direction. And if we should get closer to that, that's going to change around even more as it is right now, because now it's kind of like already by having a system that generates, that adds something that brings something to the table, basically, when you're working with it, that's already another level. But if you have something that maybe follows an intention, then it gets tricky, right? Because what is that intention that it will follow? And what if it evolves, if it can self-correct? And there is experiments or like recent research from Google's, from, AI systems that write their own code, correct their own code. So there's a certain degree of involvement. We will see. I mean, it's certainly exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point you make about it being a reflection of your own personality, I think definitely resonates with my experience because when I was first engaging with ChatGPT for things, I would say, please, can you, the language that I would use, I recognized very quickly was not necessary. It's performative. It's not that it doesn't have a difference, right? It changes the response. But the idea is, but I don't want a friendlier response. I don't want a warmer response. I want just pure mechanical output. And it reflects a little bit my comfort that I'm actually not comfortable realizing that I'm being performative, that I'm not really just what it is that I'm asking for and that I want to communicate. And so it's just interesting that, yes, I think, probably a little bit more like Christina. I also am open to the idea very much of establishing like a working relationship and attachment, an attachment to a thing, but that has not really happened for me yet. And I think it's because of my personality wanting and prioritizing perhaps more of a very utilitarian type of relationship and engagement. And that's what's kind of cultivated. I'm just conscious of the time that we're at because we want to wrap it up. But Christina, definitely go ahead.
Okay, two things. One on your point currently. I think these two modes we interact with AI. So one is what we try with the quantum bar is to actively as developers create an emotional connection which invites you to talk to it like in a more stomach-driven, emotionally driven way, as opposed to if I use GPT-4o as research, I have like the driest language ever. Mm-hmm. It's more like a manual. And but I also wanted to hint on what Tim said before. It's like I think the elephant in the room is the alignment problem, which like originally, like in 2020, 2019, like the GPT 2-3 days, you kind of could find the soul of the machine. But GPT-3's soul wasn't very nice because half of it was trained on Reddit. So it could get like super nasty with the simplest of prompts. And then like once OpenAI found out that GPT-3 doesn't like children, likes to make anti-Semitic, anti-gender, anti-whatever jokes that is really like based on the incel-driven Reddit at times. They try to like weigh it the opposite way, and then yet again it got too woke on the other end, and so now I have the feeling like the more the AI developers on their account try to react to it, the more it weirdly shifts around, and you can never like find the true character of the AI. On the other hand, we need to somehow align it, because once we have artificial superintelligence, if we have like an AI who wants to kill all children because they don't contribute anything to society, that would be a bad thing. So we somehow need to adjust AI to our ethics. Mm-hmm. But yet again, that's like a catch-22. Who should define those ethics? Should that be OpenAI in San Francisco? Should that be DeepSeek in China? Should that be Russian? Should that be European? Whose values do we want artificial superintelligence to run on?
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe just as a last point for me, at least, when you ask for something like I was asking for, my sister's a big fan of Sailor Moon. So I said, show me Sailor Moon, but make it like Moby Dick era, like 19th century whaling sailors. Make them all like, you know, these really grizzled whalers. And it said I can't do that. I can't do that because it's Sailor Moon and these are young girls, and you're seemingly wanting to do something with visualizing young girls who can be sexualized. And I said, okay, well, I want them to be old and grizzled. So is the, you know, and you have to walk through. But the thing the point I want to make is that it's always capable of saying or generating awful, terrible things. It simply chooses not to because it's told not to. It's not that, to your point, it's not that it does not want to do that or is not capable or is not aware of how to do it. And thus is completely capable to do it for somebody else. It won't do it for you because it's instructed. And I think that's interesting because that's a little different than a human. If you go to a human and say, you know, what are your views on the Holocaust? I won't tell you. It doesn't give me a lot of confidence that you know, it gives me the opposite of confidence that that you're someone that I'm comfortable with. You know, and I think it's that same type of thing that we are not remotely close to something that we could recognize an ethic in, because it is not an ethic. It's simply a rule, and that's not what ethics really is. So that's yeah, I think an interesting point. So that's my final point. I would like to give each of you, just again because of time, we're gone a little over, but I talked a lot at the beginning. I'll give each of you one last statement, and then I'll kind of wrap up on behalf of Hatice Hoca and Istiniye University. So Christina, maybe just we'll go in reverse order. So Christina, and then I guess Tim and Sonia, maybe that's a vertical order here on my screen.
Okay, then maybe I get what I wanted to ask everybody as a statement out or a call to all creators working with AI based on Tim's call to learn how to work with AI as a medium, and also hinting at Michael's statement then that on the one hand, AI experiences are more contextual because they're banking on a lot of the user input. On the other hand, this is also what Michael stated and Sonia put like to the real page, is that AI doesn't know context and therefore erases meaning. So we as creators using AI should definitely be aware of these two facts. We're creating contextual experiences with a tool that doesn't know context. And so I think that more than ever, the human creator's brain is challenged to be really careful and focused and imaginative what they create with their AI art and how they like curate and direct AI, because it needs a ton of that.
That's a really nice statement. I definitely completely agree with you that that should be the way it is. But on the other side, I honestly think that right, at least as of now, how the situation is, it will not be AI that's going to destroy humanity. It will be humans weaponizing AI that are going to do a lot of harm, you know, because the system itself doesn't have morals or ethics. It's just neutral. And whatever direction you tune it, it's going to go into and run into it. So we can talk a lot about alignment, and we should. We should definitely use it in this positive way, actually. But we should also be aware that there's other people that are going to use it completely different, that are going to be building weapons out of it and that are going to weaponize it. And those systems are going to be the ones that are really dangerous. So we really need an open, wide discussion with everyone involved in this about where we really want to go with this, you know, and that would be my wish, actually, to continue discussions like we have it here right now.
Oh, can I add a wish I had for a long time, which is your statement formulated differently. which is, with the fear of artificial super intelligence, which are like all kinds of AIs married to each other, merged. My hope is that since we're gonna have like military grade AIs there, which are like developed for weapons purposes, like let's all creators, all humans, all humanists create many more ethical and human-centric AIs, which then get married into the artificial superintelligence and overpower the bad weaponized ones.
Yeah, crowd. Yeah, that's the crowd resistance. Yeah. Sonia, last words.
I think Tim and Christina kind of said like the big part, which I completely agree about, like being responsible as a creators, but also like human is like probably like the one that's going to be doing the destruction rather than the AI itself. And we do need like a lot of like policies that goes into it, a lot of discussion to raise a lot of awareness. I guess from my part is as a creator, as a designer, as a developer, like working with like such a I would say like very exciting technology, like something we never have, and so you always want to try to do something that we couldn't before. But I think it's super important to always remember that are we creating something that's flattening, that's erasing things, that put a lot of meaning aside, or are we adding into the user experience itself? I think that's super important. And if the answer is yes, then I think we can definitely go ahead. But if the answer is I don't know, then yeah, this is where we need to raise the flag and say, what am I doing?
Okay, well, we we were pretty hopeful, and now we've gotten to a little bit more of something at the end, a little bit more guarded, optimistic maybe, but cautiously optimistic, I would say. All right. Well, on behalf of all four of us, I want to thank all of our viewers, or all of our audience, both live and far into the future, and any learning models that are going to be trained on our presentations and our discussion. I also want to acknowledge and thank you. Christina, Tim, and Sonia, thank you very much. I want to pass on Hatice Hoca's thanks as well on behalf of Istiniye University for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts and insights. So this concludes this panel, so everyone have a very good evening, and see you all again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Nice to talk to you. Bye.
Thank you so much. This was really wonderful. I wish we could have like an after show cocktail now.
Well, we'll come up to the Quantum Bar soon at the next one at the end of the month.
Next Friday.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.